Imagine limestone towers in Guilin that float like a green ocean, a hidden underground aquifer that keeps Crescent Lake alive in the desert, and rainbow mountains striped by 24-million-year-old mineral layers. We'll trace a chain of wonders from rice terraces that mirror the sky to a waterfall that splits two countries and reveals secrets like Fujian's Tulou, bound with sticky rice mortar that still shelter families. Stay for the Detian roar, the Tibet side of Everest, with its thin-air monasteries. Guilin's Lai River Valley contains one of the densest concentrations of karst pinnacles on Earth. Limestone towers, sculpted over 200 million years into razor-edged peaks and serene water-sculpted basins. Do you know that the morning mists here form predictable layers that local boatmen read like weather maps, revealing hidden caves and sudden clearings along the Lai River? Gliding downstream, traditional bamboo rafts drift past fishermen who still practice cormorant fishing, a centuries-old partnership that transforms sunrise into living theater. The river's calm reflects karst silhouettes so perennially that painters and poets have used Guilin's waters as a mirror for imagination for generations. Between jagged peaks, terraces and small villages tuck into the slopes, their patchwork rice fields changing color with the seasons like living postulates. One bend leads to Elephant Trunk Hill, where a natural arch rises from the water, and local myths say the rock is the petrified remains of a celestial animal. From there, the river widens toward Yangshuo, where limestone spires loosen into gentle karst cones, and the landscape invites rock climbers and bearers alike. Yangshuo's Moon Hill then links the river to hill trails, and hikers discover caves and viewpoints that reveal the Li River like a silver ribbon cutting through green velvet. Reed Flute Cave, carved with stalactites and ancient inscriptions, connects subterranean wonders back to the daylight panoramas, reminding visitors how the same limestone formed both earth and cavern art. Local markets along the riverbank sell freshwater fish, river snails, and prized bamboo shoots, tastes that anchor the landscape to daily life in a way photographs cannot. As boats pass karst shadows, light sculpts new scenes every minute. Clouds can erase a peak and then reveal it, as if flipping a page in a slow book of geology. By night, Lanterns along the shore trace the river's course, and the same towers that guided ancient mariners now stand as sentinels to modern travelers. In Guilin and along the Li River, geology, folklore, and daily life braid together, and each bend promises a secret that looks at first impossible, until you turn the next corner to find it real. In Fujian, the earthen Tulou rise from red clay hills that are among the world's most erosion-resistant subtropical slopes. Do you know that some Tulou were built without nails and have stood for over 7 centuries, sheltering entire clans under a single roof? Their thick rammed earth walls can reach over 2 meters wide, making these communal fortresses both fireproof and earthquake-resistant. Inside, hundreds of narrow rooms stack like honeycomb apartments around a central courtyard where ceremonies, markets, and gossip keep the lineage alive. Each Tulou's circular or rectangular plan is tuned to family structure, lineage hierarchies, and classical feng shui, turning architecture into social engineering. Local carpenters and masons mixed earth, rice husks, and lime to create walls that breathe, regulate humidity, and age like living sculpture. Many were built by Hakka and Minnan clans who fled conflict, so every gunslit and watchtower tells a history of migration and defense. That history links the Tulou to terraced tea fields and mountain temples nearby, forming a cultural corridor that visitors often miss. UNESCO recognized clusters of Tulou as World Heritage, not just for their aesthetics, but for an unusual collective use of land and resources. Far from isolated curiosities, they were hubs of grain storage, money lending, and bride exchanges, the pulse of rural Fujian life. Walking through a Tulou feels like moving through time. Timbers dark with smoke, inscriptions above doors, and ancestral tablets presiding in silence. Yet in many villages, younger generations are migrating to cities, and these vast homes face new ghosts and fresh restorations. In the Tulou, architecture becomes a map of family, of survival strategies, and of how people read the land's peculiar gifts. To understand these round, mud-walled citadels is to understand how human ingenuity can sculpt endurance from humble earth. Soon we'll move from these courtyards into the mountain valleys they overlook, and a new chapter of Fujian's living heritage awaits. But first, listen to how those walls still whisper the names of ancestors, seasons, and storms that shaped them. Detian waterfall straddles the China-Vietnam border and is the largest transnational waterfall in Asia. Do you know that during the wet season, the falls swell into many separate streams, masking cliffs and forming grottos few outsiders see? Quaison River pours over layered limestone steps, splitting and recombining into curtains that thunder down the valley. Karst formations have carved channels and terraces here over millennia, quietly directing every plunge and pool. From the decks, the waterfall sits in a bowl of subtropical forest and rice terraces, each slope feeding the river with steady runoff. In monsoon months, the scene becomes a living machine, water pushing stones and mist toward Bangyok across the border. Villagers still tell of caverns behind the main curtain where you can shelter and hear the water drum like distant thunder. Festivals send lanterns drifting into the spray, and researchers keep finding rare amphibians that depend on that constant humidity. These microhabitats cling to porous limestone ledges, preserving species and stories through changing climates. A short trail leads to quieter cascades and glassy pools that mirror jagged peaks and point the eye north toward Longsheng's terrace. Here, water meets farmland, and the river becomes a living thread, tying dramatic falls to patient human labor. Follow it farther, and the karst towers evolve into Guilin's pinnacles, linking Detian's raw force to the iconic silhouettes of southern China. Every downstream bend reveals another secret, a narrow cave, an isolated grove, or a song in a dialect shaped by running water. To stand at Detian is to feel geology, ecology, and culture cascading together, each layer folded into the next like weathered pages. As you leave the mist, the river carries those layers onward, promising more unreal landscapes and stories around the next bend. Rongbuk Monastery clings to a high ledge beneath Mount Everest's Tibetan north face, making it the world's highest monastery and a silent sentinel over Chomolungma. Do you know that the Tibetan name Chomolungma, Mother Goddess of the World, frames Everest not just as a mountain, but as a living deity in local belief? From here, a winding road rises to the North Base Camp, the only motorable approach that brings vehicles within sight of the summit. Climbers on the Tibetan route face a different mountain. Long exposed ramps and the notorious second step, a technical wall that has shaped expedition history. The Rongbuk Glacier flows like a frozen artery from the summit down to the monastery, preserving ancient ice and weather records that scientists are only beginning to read. Nearby, the Komolangma National Nature Preserve protects a fragile high-altitude ecosystem where hardy shrubs and snow leopards share thin air with rare medicinal plants. Villages in Tingri County sit on the plateau's edge, their flat-roofed houses and prayer flags connecting pastoral life directly to the mountain's rhythms. From Tingri, shepherds still navigate ancient yak trails that lead toward Everest, their routes overlapping modern expedition tracks in a tapestry of past and present. In winter, the north face shifts colors in ways climbers call the mountain breathing, an optical phenomenon tied to temperature inversion and alpha light. Local monks and scientists alike watch these shifts, blending spiritual rituals at Rongbuk with meteorological observations at high camps. Even as the world focuses on summits and records, the Tibetan approach to Everest reminds us that this is a landscape of living culture, geology, and climate entwined. By following the road from Lhasa through Tingri to Rongbuk and up to the glacier, visitors move through layers of history that culminate at the edge of the planet's roof. Photographs taken from the north reveal unexplored icefalls and fracture patterns that may rewrite local glacial maps as the plateau warms. And when prayer flags flutter at Everest's base, they are more than decoration. They are part of an ancient dialogue between people and peak that still shapes Tibet's highland identity. In Wulingyuan, more than 3,000 sandstone pillars thrust skyward, some towering above 200 meters. Do you know Wulingyuan's pillar, known as the Southern Sky Column, was renamed Avatar Hallelujah Mountain after inspiring a Hollywood film? Mist clings to the columns like drifting curtains, turning rock into illusion and hiding secret valleys. Beneath those pillars stretch over 560 caves and hundreds of clear pools where underground rivers whisper. Walking the plank paths feels like threading through a living gallery of stone, each pillar carved by millions of years of erosion. Local folklore says every pillar once held a village spirit. Modern scientists point to tectonic uplift and relentless weathering. Limestone is often blamed for such formations, but Wulingyuan's pillars are quartzite sandstone, making their sheer verticality rare worldwide. That geological surprise is one reason UNESCO declared the area a World Heritage Site, preserving both scenery and stories. From the glass skywalks of Tianmen Mountain to the emerald pools of Zhangjiajie National Forest Park, paths link one wonder to the next. A cable car ride or a narrow trail can turn from silence to a panorama where pillars dissolve into endless forest. Photographers chase the light here because even an ordinary morning can erupt into a cathedral of gold and shadow. Conservation efforts now balance tourism with ancient rhododendrons and endangered macaques that call this vertical forest home. Hidden temples cling to ledges and ancient stone steps wind into caves like the Yellow Dragon Cave, a subterranean river labyrinth. Explore one passage and you'll find another opening to a clifftop vista, each discovery nudging you toward the mountain's next secret. Scientists still study how microclimates form in pockets between pillars, nurturing species found nowhere else on Earth. And when fog lifts, the pillars seem to march toward the horizon, connecting Wulingyuan to the wider karst landscapes beyond. The region's human history threads through tea terraces and minority villages that treat these stones as living ancestors. Listen to the elders, and you'll hear stories of spirits, floods, and the time the mountains sang during an earthquake. That blend of geology, myth, and living ecosystems makes Wulingyuan more than scenery. It's a landscape that keeps revealing itself. From here, the journey continues toward Tianmen's vertiginous road and the cave systems that bear the same ancient pulse. Qinghai Lake is the largest saltwater lake in China and one of the few high-altitude saline lakes on Earth, sitting at over 3,200 meters above sea level. Do you know Qinghai Lake becomes an island-studded turquoise expanse each summer as migratory birds and blooming grasslands transform its shores into a living map of biodiversity? In late spring, the surface blooms with microscopic algae that tint the shallows, and the air fills with the thunder of returning bar-headed geese and ruddy shelducks. Local nomadic herders and Tibetan pilgrims have long timed their festivals and rituals to this yearly surge, weaving human rhythms into the lake's ecological clock. Despite its salty water, Qinghai supports reed beds, brine shrimp, and a chain of food that sustains tens of thousands of migratory birds each season. Scientists prize its sediment layers as a living archive, drilling cores here to read thousands of years of climate swings written in mud and mineral. Over recent decades, the lake's level has shown dramatic shifts, a visible symptom of glacier retreat on surrounding ranges and changes in precipitation patterns. Conservation measures and watershed restoration projects attempt to heal what has been altered, aiming to revive lost wetlands and protect breeding grounds. Along its rim, wind-carved dunes and flowering meadows fold into small islands, ringed by reed beds where eagles and herons nest. Old stories speak of boats that once ferried pilgrims to tiny monasteries and of voices chanting into a horizon that seems to go on forever. From the lake's blue edge, the road climbs and the landscape tightens into the Guilin and Kunlun foothills, where meltwater begins its journey downstream. That movement of water connects Qinghai Lake to the wider plateau and to the hidden glaciers and salt basins we'll trace next, revealing how one place shapes the next. Beneath the glassy expanse of Thousand Islands Lake, Qiando, an underwater time capsule ranks among the world's most perfectly preserved flooded cities. Do you know Qiandao Lake hides the ruins of Xicheng, a centuries-old lion city sealed underwater since 1959 that remains eerily intact? Created when the Xinan River was dammed, the lake's more than 1,000 isles puncture emerald water like scattered gemstones, each island a carved fragment of a reshaped landscape. Divers, historians, and photographers speak of stone archways, dragon reliefs, and cobbled streets resting beneath clear depths, windows to a past preserved by cool, low-oxygen water. Above the surface, bamboo groves and tea terraces fold into hills that were once the outskirts of that drowned city, blurring the line between living villages and submerged memory. Boatmen who ferry visitors through the maze of islets know secret routes that thread through hidden coves, leading sometimes to islands that appear only at low water. The lake's unique ecosystem supports translucent fish and water lilies that shimmer like silver coins, and rare birds that nest along quiet shorelines. Local scientists and conservationists balance tourism with preservation, deploying strict controls to protect both the submerged relics and the fragile ecology. At dawn, mist lifts from the water, and entire islands seem to float free of the earth, casting mirror images that double the surreal landscape. By night, the lake becomes a black sheet punctuated by lone lights from fishing boats, an ancient map retold in lanterns. Archaeologists have mapped chambers and temples underwater without excavation, using sonar and careful dives to read inscriptions that survived the flood. Their findings reveal a town of artisans and traders whose stone markers tell stories that rival any on land. Visitors glide over submerged rooftops, imagining lives paused mid-step, while guides point to lions carved in stone that seem to guard the deep. The experience blends natural beauty, human history, and a strange sense of paused time that begs one question: what else have we drowned? And what does it mean to remember it? From Qiandao, travelers often drift toward nearby ancient water towns and mist-wrapped peaks, carrying with them the memory of submerged stone into villages that still live above the water. That passage from submerged silence to bustling market lanes captures China's pattern of layered histories, where what is visible is only the latest chapter. Even short boat rides reveal islands with temples still used for prayer, connecting present-day rituals to the drowned city's long lineage. Each island becomes a page in a vast storybook of loss and continuity, and Qiandao's quiet reservoirs of memory invite us to read carefully. To truly understand Qiandao is to feel the tug between preservation and progress, where turbines harness power and divers preserve heritage below the surface. And as you leave its green waters behind, you carry an impossible image: a city at the bottom of a lake, not erased but waiting, patient and luminous. Luoping's rapeseed fields form one of the planet's largest continuous carpets of golden blooms, carpeting tens of thousands of miles of terraced hills that ripple into the horizon. Do you know that Luoping's yellow tide coincides with the rare spring arrival of Siberian swans and the elusive wild peonies, producing a fleeting micro-ecosystem that draws scientists as well as photographers? In the low morning light, The terraces reflect the sky in narrow ribbons, while ridgelines cut sharp silhouettes against the gold. Farmers still plant heirloom varieties and follow ancestral schedules, so the bloom peaks in waves that look like brushstrokes on a living canvas. Narrow lanes weave between fields, leading to villages of stone and wood, where smoke from tea houses softens the brilliance. Children who grew up amid this seasonal spectacle count the blooms as a calendar, timing weddings and festivals to the mustard flower's peak. The rapeseed here doesn't just feed an industry, it feeds myths. Local elders will point out a boulder shaped like a sleeping giant and tell of spring spirits who paint the hills. Each year, researchers catalog pollinators that swarm the blossoms, revealing insect networks unique to these highland valleys. Photographers climb limestone outcrops to frame the mosaic of terraces, rivers, and karst peaks, chasing the moment when mist reveals the layers like a watercolor wash. That interplay of light, river, and stone is what makes Luoping feel less like a single place and more like an unfolding sequence in a story. Markets in the nearby town burst with rapeseed oil, pressed by hand and sold alongside paintings that try and fail to capture the intensity of a yellow. Travelers who time their visit often continue south to rice terraces that reverse the seasonal palette, linking Luoping's spring gold to summer's emerald stairs. Local guides will teach you how to read the land, where streams will swell, which ridge will hold the last bloom, turning landscapes into living maps. Even in the quiet afternoons, when most tourists have left, the fields hum with bees and the distant chatter of village life. Leaving Luoping feels like stepping out of a chapter of folklore, but its visual logic points the way to Yunnan's next marvels, where human cultivation sculpts mountains. From here, the journey threads toward terraces of rice and tea, connected by the same rhythms of water, labor, and seasonal light. Photographers and scientists leave with data and images that enter global exhibitions, yet locals measure success by the health of the soil and the timing of snowfall. And that soil, tended year after year, will be your last image of Luoping's power before the road winds onward to the next cultivated wonder. Longji rice terraces in Guangxi form a living, layered staircase carved into mountain flanks over 7 centuries, where each contour was hand-built to capture rain and sunlight. Do you know Longji rice terraces are sometimes called the dragon's backbone, and were engineered so precisely that villagers manipulate water flow to create reflective mirror films that map the sky? Families from the Zhuang and Yao minorities still tend the fields, passing down planting calendars and terrace repair techniques that scientists study for climate resilience. The terraces rise like concentric ribbons, creating microclimates where different rice varieties mature at staggered times to spread harvest risk. In spring, the shallow paddies become shimmering canvases, turning entire mountains into mirrors that trap sunrise, clouds, and the flight paths of migrating birds. When mist rolls through the valleys, the terraces vanish into a sea of clouds, making villages seem to float between earth and sky. Each contour requires constant maintenance. Mud bunds, bamboo shutters, and stone channels, crafted so water can be diverted across vast elevation changes with minimal loss. This ancient hydraulic system lets farmers plant on steep slopes where terracing increases arable land in a region otherwise too rugged for rice. Festivals still mark the planting and harvest, with reed whistles, dragon boat metaphors, and songs that encode weather knowledge tied to specific terrace rows. Walking the narrow paths between paddies, you can read the terraces like a living map of community memory and environmental adaptation. The terraces also support biodiversity, frogs, aquatic insects, and migratory waterfowl, creating an ecological web that enhances pest control and soil fertility. Researchers now study Longji as a model for sustainable hillside agriculture, where tradition and ecology converge. From certain overlooks, the terraces cascade toward the Li River basin, visually echoing the karst peaks that will lead us next toward Guilin's riverine landscapes. That visual and cultural link between hand-hewn terraces and limestone towers reveals how human design and natural geology shape each other across southern China. At sunrise, local elders still perform blessing rituals on the highest rice ridges, tracing the water channels with offerings to ensure even irrigation. These rituals, like the terracing itself, are survival strategies disguised as tradition, binding communities to the land through shared labor. Photographers chase the perfect reflection, but the real spectacle is the ongoing choreography. Water, soil, and human hands working in cyclical harmony. To understand Longji is to witness how fragile-looking steps of mud and stone have sustained families and landscapes for generations. As we leave the terraces, the trail winds down toward river valleys, where the next chapter of China Unreal waits among limestone pillars and winding waterways. There, the patterns etched by people on mountains will find counterparts carved by water over millennia. And the story continues. Along its length, the Great Wall of China threads through cloud-wreathed granite peaks and wind-scrubbed ridgelines, where seasonal mists create microclimates found in almost no other places on Earth. Do you know the Great Wall crosses deserts, alpine meadows, and river valleys? And some Ming sections were bonded with sticky rice mortar that still holds after 6 centuries. The wall is not a single ribbon, but a tapestry of built, ruined, and reclaimed stretches that reveal local geology and craft. Walk Jiangku, and you feel the wall stitched to jagged limestone teeth, while Jinshanling curves like a dragon over oak-studded crests. Move east, and Mutianyu's restored battlements rise through pine forests, their shadows lengthening across terraces once tended by villagers. Further west at Jiayuguan, the wall dissolves into deserts where sandstorms once swallowed entire watchtowers, and nomads read the ruins like weather maps. Between these extremes lie ghost sections where wild wall, uncared stretches, has become a wildlife corridor for foxes, deer, and rare birds. Hidden chambers inside certain towers preserve soot stains from beacon fires and scratched names of soldiers who vanished into history. Stone by stone, the wall records local hands and materials, from sun-baked rammed earth in Gansu to gray brick and dressed stone near Beijing. Maps have long suggested continuity, but recent surveys reveal gaps, diversions, and even subterranean passages used in war and triste. Climb a ruined tower at dawn, and you'll see the wall disappear into cloud and reappear like memory, linking villages, passes, and legends across centuries. In every brick lie fingerprints of survival and invention. And as we move from one section to the next, the wall teaches how nature and human design reshaped each other over millennia. For over 2 millennia, defying the relentless advance of the Gobi. Do you know that the singing sand dunes, Mingsha-shan, can produce thunderous musical tones when wind and footsteps set their grain sliding? For Silk Road caravans, that pale blue crescent of water was a life-saving mirror in the desert, a landmark that guided traders through endless dunes. Today, the lake's ancient pagoda reflections and the dunes' deep, low notes still pull visitors into a landscape that seems orchestrated rather than accidental. Scientists say the dunes etched because of perfectly rounded quartz grains, dry conditions, and synchronized motion that turn sliding sand into sound. Locals and monks once believed the music was the desert speaking, a warning or blessing measured in bass and hum rather than words. Crescent Lake's water has ebbed and flowed with climate and human use, shrinking dramatically in the 20th century before a careful restoration raised its level again. The story of its recovery reveals how fragile miracles can be coaxed back to life with engineering, community effort, and protection from overuse. Stand at the lake's rim, and you feel two timelines: the tranquil, reflective pool used by pilgrims, and beyond it, eons that shift meters in a single storm. Walk into the slopes of Mingshan, and the sand makes music underfoot, a soundscape that can change pitch with each step and pick up a chorus when the wind intensifies. Archaeologists say many caravan routes braided here, pausing at the Crescent for water and listening to dunes that sometimes mask the clatter of distant armies. That interplay of survival and sensory mystery made Dunhuang a place where maps met myths and where merchants traded silk alongside tales of singing deserts. Engineers now protect the lake with subterranean water channels and careful visitor limits, keeping the Crescent from being smothered by sand. Meanwhile, researchers record the dunes' frequencies, hoping to map how grain size and humidity change the desert's melodies from noon to night. The result is a place where science and storytelling meet. Instruments capture tones that ancient poets could only describe, and modern hands keep the oases at bay. The next time you think of deserts as silent voids, remember Dunhuang's Crescent and its musical dunes, proof that even the harshest places keep secrets. Keep listening. The rest of this journey will follow the caravan tracks, revealing how these two wonders shaped empires, faith, and the very map of trade across Asia. The Rainbow Mountains of Zhangye in Gansu display vibrant mineral bands formed over millions of years. Stripes of crimson, ochre, emerald, and gold arc across ridges like a landscape painted by geological time. Sediments rich in iron and other trace minerals were folded and lifted by tectonic forces, then sculpted by erosion. The result is an open-air chronicle of ancient deserts, rivers, and shallow seas that once swept this region. At sunrise, the colors intensify. At dusk, they mellow into bronze and shadow, changing every hour and season. No single photograph can capture how the bands bend, fracture, and dissolve into neighboring valleys and gullies. Local myths call them dragon scales, but scientists read them as pages in Earth's slow history, each layer a sentence. Boardwalks and viewpoint oases offer a human scale to that immensity, letting visitors trace contours with their eyes. Beyond the spectacle, the mountains hide fossils and mineral veins that hint at climates and ecosystems long gone. Those clues connect Zhangye to distant ranges, forming routes that guided caravans and shaped human settlement. From here, travelers follow trails toward wind-carved canyons and the relics of Silk Road outposts tucked into Gansu's folds. The Rainbow Mountains become a gateway where color yields to scale and natural forces rewrite the land. They demand you slow down and read the landscape, noticing how tiny fragments of rock point to vast, patient processes. Keep that curiosity and follow the shifting light toward the next chapter of China Unreal. Where flowing water and shifting sands will reveal how landscapes and human stories are braided together across time and collective memory. From the pillar forests of Zhangjiaji to the rainbow cliffs of Zhangye Dangxia, this journey has mapped a China that seems to have stepped out of another world. Each landscape, karst peaks, painted sandstone, crystalline lakes, high plateaus, and terraced fields, carries its own ancient clock, keeping time in ways you did not expect. You followed rivers that carved canyons and cultures that carved language into stone. From the mist-veiled steppes of Huangshan to the braided waters of the Yangtze. You saw how human hands and natural forces collaborated in the Hani terraces and the stone cities of ancient towns, creating patterns both practical and breathtaking. Even in places most visitors pass by, the small villages beneath the Tibetan sky, the hidden hot springs, the caves that light up with bioluminescent life, China keeps secrets that wait to be noticed. What seemed like separate wonders are threads in the same tapestry. Glaciers feed rivers that water rice bowls. Monsoons sculpt mountains that guide trade routes and stories. If you leave here thinking you have seen China, remember, these landscapes are still changing. Sandstone cliffs are woven into new sculptures. Lakes shift color with each season. And the people who live with these places keep passing down ways to read the land. Recipes, rituals, and maps that are part science and part memory. Carry one question forward. Which hidden corner will change how you imagine the planet next? Keep looking, because what feels unreal today will be tomorrow's map, and there are still more miracles tucked between mountains, waters, and streets.